really excited for this episode today. We're now here at Pilsen Arts and Community House in Pilsen. So our new co-host is Pablo Ramirez and Teresa Mangayan. Pilsen Arts and Community House has been a staple of this community for years now, and we would love to, hear from you guys. What motivated you and what had the reason why you guys opened here.
Well, I think that most people that know us know that we started out as Pilsen Outpost, which we were running as a gallery and a retail shop for artists in the community. We ran it for 7 years under that name. But we had to kind of rethink that as we were experiencing COVID this year and how we were gonna sustain ourselves. So Pilsen Arts and Community House was already a plan for us. We just accelerated how much quicker we were gonna become a nonprofit.
When did you guys open Pilsen Outpost?
So it's been like roughly 7 years since we started Pilsen Outpost. I think, we started as 3 artists coming together and basically selling our own artwork, our own creations, and it kind of grew naturally. We started out at the Pilsen Farmers Market, and Teresa had already done some art fairs and some things, so she had already was in that kind of lifestyle of creating and being a maker and being an artisan, and I kind of latched on right away. And then we had our other partner, Diana Solis, and we came together and we were just like a really good fit from the beginning. Then we partnered up with Katrina Cafe over there on 18th and Morgan, and they said they were just gonna expand their shop, and they said, hey, we'll build you a little corner and you could have your shop in this corner. And it was enclosed, so we didn't have to be there all the hours, but when we wanted to be there like the weekend hours, we would begin selling through there. So that's kind of like our first start.
That was our first experience of this idea of being under a house, because Katrina Cafe, Diana and Sal opened up their door and said, hey, we have available space for you. We see you guys starting out. We want to give you an opportunity. Here's this space for you to use. And I think that's really, it just kind of like came together, because it's like, that's what we've continued to do, is like we are doing the same thing for other people. Hey, we have the space. Hey, we have the space in the calendar. Let's do something, So yeah, it's very reminiscent of what Pablo and I experienced growing up in the neighborhood, with places like the Jumping Bean and the Apple Building and some of the other cafes. What was that one?
500 Nations with Saul over here, and we've had just so many. I think people always think, not to cut you off, but I think people always feel like there's this new wave of things. And it's like art, or that they're discovering art in Pilsen, or that Pilsen's coming up. And I think what people hopefully get from this conversation is that artists have been here, right? Murals are not new, right? It's always been a part of our culture. It's always been a part of our community. And I think that that's where we're just a manifestation of everything that's happened before us.
Yeah.
We're just a continuation. We're bridging the gap between the maestros that have been before us to us and through our space.
Right, and I think, so that's exactly a big part of why that's rooted in us. When we did get our space, that we opened our heart and our mind to the idea of like, we're not just selling our artwork. Like we know what we were offered as an opportunity, whether it was as a participant or a viewer. It was here, and as everything's kind of changed over, the years, we know how scarce that is sometimes. So for us to be able to continue that, like Pablo said, it feels really good and satisfying and very nurturing, because there is still a lot of us from the neighborhood, and that's another topic we'll talk about, but that we still crave that and we still want that, and we want that for our younger kids. You know, I have kids and I wanted them to experience that too. There's a lot of kids from Benito Juarez, you know, and some of the other grammar schools around here where it's like, as the community's changing, there's certain things like we're changing and evolving too, but we're still providing some of those rooted elements that we got to keep passing down in some way. And it almost feels like a sense of responsibility to do that if we're gonna be doing what we're doing.
So how receptive has the community been with these guys?
I mean, well, I think as Pilsen Outpost, when we first opened up, it was a gradual awareness of what we were doing. I think for both of us, the good thing was that we had already been working on our own respective art, you know, whether it was visually or him like in his writing and poetry. And he's got a lot of history here because of his family and the artists that he's worked with in the neighborhood. But it was an exciting time, I think, those first 2 years, because I think maybe there was like a gap where younger artists didn't have an avenue to like present themselves. And so I think it was really exciting for them and for us, because it was all of a sudden, hey, there's this space, we can go do an art show, we can do a performance. You know, they're selling artwork on consignment, and that was really interesting for us to teach other people about that business side of like selling your artwork. And I think that was a time actually too where I saw a lot of makers and artists using the vending and being a vendor. It was during like those first couple of years where all of a sudden there was this very like flourishing time of like makers and artisans that were bringing their stuff out to sell, whether it was at markets or in different shops and things like that.
So earlier you guys mentioned that you had teamed up with Katrina Cafe. As we know, Katrina Cafe, unfortunately, the way I see it was I don't know if I want to use the word victim.
They were priced out.
They were victims of gentrification, and they were priced out of our neighborhood.
Wow.
One of the best coffee houses and really chill places I've been to. I was always able to relax. So I felt at home. You know, just with my laptop, or you having a meeting, or just trying to take the load off.
Yeah.
It was a great place. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess I'll take this one, but obviously it's sad. I think whenever a business can't survive, it's a little sad. But since we've been around, these 7-8 years, we've seen it time and time again. We've seen a lot of good up and coming galleries, a lot of, Katrina Cafe was just like such a big impact on the community. I think people took it for granted having a community space. Even politicians would go and do their meetings over there. Just having that space, I find it very similar to us in the fact that there's this need for places to gather in the community, to organize, to grow, to learn, and there are not a lot of these spaces available, right? So whenever one closes, I think, it's like a mini tragedy that we could not support it. But maybe we didn't go there, we didn't buy enough, maybe we didn't. I guess it's more like people assume that, business is great, right? They're selling coffee, there's a line out the door. Or I think too many people, when it comes to business, and I think this is going to touch on some of the stuff that you've shot in the last week, is that we assume that businesses are okay. We assume Pilsen Outpost was okay because they've been around. They moved to 18th Street, right? And not too many people ask, like, how is it going? I think now, because of COVID, I think people, that's more of like a polite thing to say, like, how's business doing? But it's not I don't know how, and I think with us, it's pretty genuine that people want to know, like, how's it going? Because they want to see us here. But what people don't know is the only reason we're here is for the community. And that's where the community part of we're going back to the Pilsen Arts and Community House. That's the community aspect of our name.
All right, guys, so we were talking about small businesses and some of the small tragedies basically that we have when they close down. Just over the weekend, I decided just start walking around our small businesses and just literally just pop in and just say, ask them how are they doing right now during this pandemic. Like you said earlier, sometimes we think that everybody's okay, they're selling coffee or they're selling this. Doesn't really think about the human element behind these stores and these small businesses that make Pilsen. So I went to the small Mexican store called Zarai Imports. They're on 18th Street right before Ashland. And I want to say about 3 weeks ago, I went in there to buy some things, and I was just amazed at the story that they had told me about how a lot of everything they have is from Mexico. So I wanted to go back and just hear more about their story.
I mean, my parents started this, my mom started this over 20 years ago. Out of her own money, no loans, no anything, out of their own savings. And for us, to me, it's like, hey, we're just gonna roll with the punches and see what happens and just kind of think outside the box to kind of make it happen. And we're so thankful to the community, to our customers, to people that really understand the value of what, not just Zarai, but what we're trying to do. That's what it really comes down to. Like a lot of this stuff comes from Mexico. So to us, it's more about helping the people or making the economy in Mexico for these families. We can't maybe help with monetary items. Many times we try to do as much as we can, like donate an item for raffle or stuff like that. We try to participate as much as we can because at the end of the day, Zarai was born in Pilsen, back in Maxwell Street. I call it Pilsen, but to me it was Maxwell Street Market over in Halsted. For many of you guys knew, but it was back when it was a canal port. I'm not sorry, canal. And that's where it started. We were a 10 by 10 booth, and then evolved to this, and it's just, I'm just grateful to everyone in the community and just our customers in general, because without them, we still would not be here every day.
Pues que yo los invito a que nos ayuden a seguir ayudando a nuestra gente, nuestras familias mexicanas, especialmente la gente de las comunidades, de los pueblitos que hacen sus cosas manuales, ayudarles a que ellos tengan ¿cómo se llama? Una entrada de dinero con que subsistir, y más en estas temporadas que pues no tienen de dónde.
Where can people find you? We're located at 1724 West 18th Street, right in the heart of Chicago, which is Pilsen. We're a couple feet away from the Pink Line, 1724 West 18th Street, not place.
And your social media?
Social media is Instagram, Zarai, Zarai _Chicago. And Facebook, it's Zarai, Zarai Imports.
When she came here, there was one family that was doing everything for them, but now they help 5 families. They are barely making ends meet from what they're selling, but talking to her and she is basically saying, if I close down, I can't, these 5 families that we're supporting now, they won't be able to make ends meet. If we close down, they can't put food on their table. So that just speaks about the sacrifice that our people do. What do you guys think about that?
That's such a story, I think, very common with maybe in our cultura of us as entrepreneurs and business and how we start. It's either like that, like un puesto, a corner, a table. That's so interesting that they started on Maxwell, right? And we started out in the Pilsen Farmers Market, in a 10 by 10 booth, and so that's really, that give me chills, because it's like, wow,
yeah.
We start off from like super, super humble beginnings,
And I think I've talked about this before, but I think that, like she said, we started in a 10 by 10 booth. But if I look back at my influences, Carlos Cortez, you know, when I was growing up in the 80s, he would set up a Fiesta del Sol and have a 10 by 10 booth selling posters, hand printed posters, 10 to $40. I don't think anything was over $50, $60. It was affordable political art that was such a big influence.
A very similar story here in Pilsen, you know, sacrificing, helping, you know, like the title of today's vlog, you know, it's hardworking sacrifice al poder de la gente, right? Because that's the power that our people have to continue and to persevere and to push, and it's a selfless way of doing these things. Like, we're not doing it for, like I said, we're not necessarily doing it for us. We're doing it to just our people, our pueblo, our community. When I left Zarai, I noticed the lady right next door. She had set up about 5 tables with produce. La señora Juana Morales, wonderful person, and I was just intrigued, and I just went up to her and I just started talking to her. I just wanted to know more of her story.
¿Razón por qué ustedes venden acá afuera?
Sí,
¿Por la pandemia?
la pandemia, sí, porque
Sí.
en las garras está cerrado y hay más contaminación.
Oh, entonces lo traen acá afuera.
Sí,
Ah,
pues esperemos en Dios que no nos moleste la policía porque pues de esto vivimos.
¿y no los han molestado?
No, gracias a Dios ahorita no. Yo
No.
ya tengo 8 años vendiendo esto.
¿Qué más le ha afectado a usted personalmente la pandemia?
En todo, y a toda la familia, todo, y hubo pérdidas también en la familia. Un cuñado también falleció.
¿Tienen planes para después de que cuando empiece a nevar? ¿Cómo le van a hacer?
Exactamente, ahorita no tenemos planes, pero no sé cómo le vayamos a hacer, a dónde recurrir y todo para la ayuda, más que nada por los biles, porque los biles no esperan, dicen que van a esperar, pero no esperan, ni la renta tampoco no esperan.
¿Usted renta o tiene
Sí,
su
no,
propia?
nosotros rentamos.
¿Sí?
Sí.
¿Y cuánto tiempo lleva usted y su familia aquí en Chicago?
Aquí 40 años.
¿40 años?
Ujú.
Ah, ¿pueden encontrar ustedes aquí todos los días o cómo?
Pues cuando los días están bonitos y se prestan, como ahorita, porque cuando está muy frío esto se congela y uno también no aguanta el frío.
Ok.
Ujú.
Entonces
Pero-
la podemos ver como una semana o 2, 3.
Sí, para la próxima semana aquí vamos a
¿Sí
estar
viene?
también.
¿Cómo a qué horas están ustedes acá afuera?
Aquí estamos desde las 12 a las 5.
¿Y cuáles días?
Es martes, jueves, sábado.
As you can see, you know, she was very, you could see in her eyes, you know, that what are we gonna do? You know, everybody's taking right now, day by day. The business that I visited. So one of my favorite restaurants here in Pilsen is Tayahua Tacos, Taqueria Tayahua on 24th and Western. I literally go probably there maybe 5 times a week. You know, me da flojera cocinar.
across the street.
Never. Hell no. We had a show called No Quiero Taco Bell. That's how we started Pilsen Pod. It's actually No Quiero Taco Bell. You know?
I remember that.
We didn't want that there, pero ni modo, right? You know, it is what it is. Pero, you know, so yeah, I went to Tayahua, and you know, I consider him a good friend now. Rolando, he's a chef, but also part owner of the Taqueria Tayahua, and you know, he had an amazing story about his family. That, you know, he works there all, you know, basically every day, you know, of the week. You know, he's a very friendly guy. And, you know, his family has been here for over 28 years. It's difficult. COVID has really hit him hard.
Well, it's been rough for everybody. It's been obviously sales have gone down. You know, the staff is almost a skeleton staff. We have we're working more hours, but it's not coming out as they used to. You know, as far as financially. But we're doing the best that we can. You know. We've been in this community for 28 years. This business, we've been family business all 28 of those years. You know, this is home. You know, our family are our customers, and you know, our workers are our family. And you know, we do our best to make everybody happy and just be here as long as we can. I see little kids, you know, grow up to be adults and live off, pretty much grow on our tacos, you know. They get fed and get all the nutrition from us. So it's a great feeling to see all these, you know, families that have been supporting us for so long, and all these people that have been with us for so many years. And we plan to be here many more years if we can, you know. And hopefully this is just a hiccup, you know, in our community, and support small businesses, support local, and take care of your own. Take care of your neighbors, and take care of everybody, you know, that's close to you. And that's gonna help you, and it's gonna help us. So,
you know, and that's what I'm hoping that this episode, you know, people realize that, you know, it's difficult for them. And the small businesses are a pulse of Pilsen. They are the backbone of Pilsen. And I don't want to see, and nobody should want to see, any of these businesses have to close or any business have to leave.
There's not a lot of love for small business. I think you know, every 4 years or every 2 years, whenever there's elections, I feel like there's a lot of talk from our politicians, and I know Javier and I, you know, we've been through it with the unions, and we know that there's a lot of talk, and it's these key phrases. I heard it from Lightfoot, I heard it from Preckwinkle, small businesses, we're gonna support them, we're gonna do this for them. And then once they get elected, it's like crickets. It's like, we don't have politicians come through the door. We don't have their support just to say like, what can we help you with, right? What is, I think, unless you go to City Hall, like, you don't really have any interaction, and that's only to get your licenses. And I don't know if Teresa wants to speak about that or how that process goes. There's no backing. There's zero backing from the city on this, of actually supporting businesses that are in business, right? But they always say it, so it's one of these weird things where it's like, well, how can they actually help? And maybe it's part of us reaching out to them and saying, this is what we need right now.
I think even within the small business realm, there's some tiers in that, because you have, you know, a small business that's, you know, within a certain range of what their annual, you know, money making is in the year. And then you have the tier of like your corner store and a Zarai and a place like us, where you're a owner operated space or place or small business, and you don't, like, during this time, like, you don't qualify for some of these small business loans because you didn't have employees, because you were just a couple dollars shy of being under what you made last year. It's really interesting how the city and even the federal government deems what a small business is, because everybody talked about it when those small business loans were coming out. They were still going to like small chains, like small family-owned businesses that maybe had like 3 or 4 restaurants. Great, I get it. But what about the one owner restaurant, the one owner operated restaurant? I think they, you know, I saw in the footage that you shared, like one of those restaurants, like they didn't qualify for whatever reason, but it's like, we heard that very commonly in our own community, and people asking us, hey, did you guys qualify for a small business loan? And it's like, well, we're owner operated, we didn't have employees, we're a different kind of format, which, just to kind of add in there again, is like one of the reasons we accelerated becoming a nonprofit, because we would qualify for art related funding and grants instead of how we were running as a for-profit gallery space, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're just, in summary, like the tiers of what's considered a small business is really, I don't think people talk about that enough.
No, and the one, it's like with COVID, this is a prime example of the city and their action. They opened up like apply for the city aid, right? You could go through a loan process, right? This is a loan. We're trying to get a loan for our business, not even a grant, not even like just free money or whatever, or support. And, first of all, it took weeks for them to get back to me. And then I got an email from somebody from the city saying, oh, that's great. I'm going to be taking your application. I'll be back in touch. And then like 2-3 weeks later, they emailed me and they were like, well, we actually looked into your city record and you owe $900 in parking tickets. And I responded and I said, wait a second, like, no, I did owe back in the day. I've owed parking tickets in the past, but now I own a business. I can't have parking tickets on my business because they will take away my license immediately.
They will put a hold on it.
And I mentioned that to the person I was emailing, and she responded. Her response wasn't like, oh, well, let me look into it. It was like, oh, well, fix that and you will be able to qualify to go through the next step of the process. I wasn't even through like any of the process or talking about a loan or anything. So I got denied like in this, not beginner step, but it was like halfway through the process. And if you're really counting on support through COVID, like Pilsen Outpost would have never made it. I mean, we literally had a conversation about, are we closing the doors for good when COVID hit, right? And I think we had to look within ourselves and say, we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing it for the community. What is the avenue to continue? So when we look at these restaurants, there's a lot of sympathy, and I would like to cook every day, but it's not possible. So we do go out and we try to take turns, right, on like what businesses we're supporting. But it's always good to hear about taquerias that you'd want to go to, like Taco Bueno, like La Única. Like we grew up on those tacos. Those were the best $1 tacos, $1.25 tacos. I think that was the most they ever were.
It was $1.25 anything but a chile relleno. The chile relleno was $2.50.
That was like the premium.
That was the premium.
The chile relleno was a premium.
Yeah.
If people like, this is good that we're having the show and that we're from here. This proves that we're from here.
I did visit Victor Bueno. You walk into Taco Bueno, it's the Victor Bueno family literally behind making the food for us. And I mean, the prices are amazing. It's and he does that because he just wants to make sure that people from the community, are able to afford his food. He's such a humble man.
Que no nomás tenemos para llevar y aquí la situación está muy mal. La verdad que nomás estamos sobreviviendo nada más. No hacemos negocio porque nomás.
¿Cuánto tiempo lleva usted con su negocio aquí?
Yo tengo 20 años.
¿Y cómo empezó antes? Mucha gente lo conoce a usted como trabajando en el otro restaurante.
Sí.
¿Cuánto tiempo llevaba ya?
Ahí duré como 30 años.
Oh, wow.
Duré 30 años ahí trabajando y ahí pues, batallando, pues ahí vamos. Ahorita con la pandemia, la verdad que dimos trabajo porque los biles llegan, las rentas y todo, y la verdad que está muy complicado la cosa.
¿Han recibido asistencia o ayuda del estado o de la ciudad?
No, la verdad que no digo nada.
¿Y por qué crees que es eso?
Pues no sé, la verdad, pues uno aplica y no nos da nada.
Y afortunadamente pues mucha gente dice que ese dinero se va a las cooperaciones grandes, ¿verdad? No las chicas como ustedes.
Sí, pues sí, uno sí ha aplicado, pero nunca nos ha dado nada. Y aquí por eso uno aquí está aguantando pues, a nada completamente. Trabajador toda mi vida, he sido trabajador. Y siempre le he echado muchas ganas, pues. Y mis hijos también, mandarlos a la escuela y todo. Pues la verdad que sí. Estoy muy contento, nos han apoyado mucho, he puesto los especiales y todo. Y pues sí, también darles algo a ellos también, los especiales y nomás para sobrevivir, es todo, porque la verdad, dinero no hemos hecho nada, la verdad. Nomás sobrevivir y todo. La verdad está muy complicado todo. Estoy trabajando ahora desde las 11 de la noche desde ayer. Trabajando porque no se puede uno ocupar gente porque no hay dinero para pagar gente.
¿Y quién trabaja contigo? ¿Es tu familia?
Sí, familia. Mis hijos nomás. Antes teníamos empleados, pero ya la gente nos ayudaba. Ahorita ya no se puede. Ya no se puede porque no hay dinero que pagarles. Nada más ahorita estamos para sobrevivir nada más.
As our community keeps changing, so does, I've noticed a lot of our murals have changed. I know we spoke about it earlier, but what are your thoughts about the ever-changing murals here in our community?
Some of the parts of the murals and the changing, I think, as a normal outsider, right, not as an artist or somebody that's looking, I think there's been different reactions, right? I think people see like the viaducts that were dirty and gray and whatever, they see them now. They're graffitied constantly. They're pieces, they're part of groups, they're even educational components, and I think those things are very beautiful, right? Because when we could keep our youth interested in art and interested in creation, then I think that keeps them busier and keeps them off the streets to do other things.
I feel like the murals, they had a message, they had a story, and a lot of that story had to do with our community, our struggles, our people. Well, when I mean by people, the Mexican community, Mexican people, and I feel a lot of that has changed, and I don't know why. I don't know if the new folks that moved in are just new artists that are just looking for a space. I mean, is there a regard for what was there before? I mean, painting over murals that have been there for a very long time, and then you have, I get it, they want to express themselves, but where's the respect to, what was there before?
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting over the last 2 years, especially this year, because I think there was kind of a free-for-all, so to speak, and because of the state of the city and the world that we're in right now, as far as where art was being put up. Obviously, during the most heightened time this year, the most important political art was being put up as public art, which that's definitely, I think, something that Pilsen has always kind of had anyway. But I say the last 2 years because I grew up seeing the same thing, where I'm born and raised here, right? So when I would see these murals that had this very Mexican or cultural feel to it and look to it and aesthetic to it, it intrigued me, and it prompted me to what is that? What does that mean? What is that image, or what is that story? So I think that's always been an important thing, because a lot of the murals from Pilsen, right, are from people from, well, there's kind of a variety. There's a Hector Duarte, right, that, immigrated here, and he has definitely put his visual, art all over, Pilsen and all over. But then there's also Chicano artists from Chicago here, that have learned from maestros like Duarte to be able to create those kind of stories visually. And it's kind of evolved, right? Because just for example, we have a Rocco behind us, his artwork behind us. He's from Mexico, but he's got a very modern, what we call kind of a neo-Mexicanismo type twist to it. So it's very interesting, because what is Mexican art, right? And what is traditional muralism, and how all of this morphs together. We do have different generations of artists living in this community specifically. So it's really interesting for me to see all of those things kind of revealing themselves. For example, there's the Ayotzinapa mural over on 18th and Western, which is very powerful. Raya's mural starts off first, which is very politically based, and then the Ayotzinapa one that they started in 2019, they would have continued it this year, had everything kind of been different. And then you have like a Gabriel Villas work where he's very Chicano, and his style is a little bit different. So it's very interesting to see that merge and morph into then seeing some of like the street art, where it's more of like kind of character type art, but it's like with positive messages, which I think speaks to like our younger generation, which is good because we want art to do that. And I think like what you said, it's like there's such a variety and a mix that the receptiveness of our community when new murals come up, it is very like judged and critiqued. I mean, we've done a couple of mural projects where we've sponsored or co-sponsored, and a lot of people don't know it because we don't put that at the forefront, but we help facilitate, some artists get murals done here. But it's we approach it with a mindfulness of where is it gonna be at, who's gonna see it, what message is it giving to that immediate residential community, because they're the ones that are gonna see it every day. And granted, Pilsen is a place that brings a lot of people, and it's like one of the big highlights of coming here is coming to see the murals, but they go home and we live with the art around us. So we have to be mindful of what we're doing in a big scale visually and how we're changing that visual fabric. And I think that brings a lot of like interesting conversation, and it's a hard conversation sometimes because we have lots of respect for a lot of our artists that we work with, the community artists, and for the most part, as artists, like we're both artists too, like we want to create like really visually aesthetic things that mean something to us, but we also have to think like, what's it going to mean, or how's it going to affect everybody else that's going to see it, and that's a hard conversation sometimes to have with an artist, to say, you do have a responsibility of what visually you're going to put up, because how do you think that's going to affect the visual fabric of the existing community. So I don't know, I think in the last year, like in this year itself, like fortunately there's been some really great art that has been able to be put up, and there was 3 murals specifically that I thought had a really interesting story and contrast to each other, that I know we had talked about, where I'm like, wow, this is like 3 totally different kinds of murals that really speaks to what Pilsen brings in and what it like fosters also, so for example, I think the biggest one we could talk about right now is like Pablo Serrano's mural. It's like we haven't had a ginormous mural like that in a long time. I think maybe some of the most biggest ones have probably been like a Zimmerman one and a Del Real, but it's been even obviously Hector Duarte with his taking up his whole house. So I think it's been really amazing to see him take what he knows he's come up from and what he has learned in this community from some of these maestros to create such a visual piece of art, because all the people in that mural mean something and there's a story behind it, and people are going to be like, who is that person? Like every single person here is either a living existing person right now, or they were somebody that was really impacted the community. So that's really great because people are going to ask those questions. Who is that, right? And we have people like Luis Tubens that does the Pilsen mural art walks, which he'll be able to tell people and share, because that's a role that he's taken on himself. So I think like that's one big one that comes to mind first off. Something very, very different, I think, in what people think is Mexican art and what a Mexican or cultural mural is. It's, you can feel it, you can see it in the colors and in the aesthetic of it, but it's very, it's now, it's like, you know, very modern.
You see the big eyes, you see the, you know, just to me, like it gives you that almost like a blend of like comic also, like you know.
It's very graphic.
Yeah, 90s
right?
style comics. You know, I see it, you know, a lot of good dark strokes around the images.
Yeah.
And like you said, I don't think you necessarily think that that's going to be necessarily a Mexican artist. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think we really, I mean, before you go to the next one, I want to talk about like some of our partnerships. When we, like Teresa said, we're thinking about like the mural we did with SENKOE at Cinco Rabanitos. Like we really thought about that business, and when we approached that business, we didn't approach them to say, hey, give me some money so we could paint a mural. It was like, hey, we want to support your local business. We going in COVID, or we're having these struggles, like let's help each other. We're bringing in an artist, and he's gonna give you a mural that would cost 3, 4, 5 times that, and we're gonna actually pay for all that. And we're gonna create something that people are gonna come and use and see and take pictures by and recognize your restaurant. And the beautiful thing of that is that right away, like he had it on his website, he had, you know, the pictures with the menus and the food and the mural. So I think it was that beautiful collaboration that we were able to do and still it be part of the fabric. Now he was given another opportunity to paint a bigger mural down the street from there.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that's part of what you
that was the one. So, you know, obviously that was the introduction of like SENKOE. Like he'd already been here in Chicago a couple of times over the years. But he was given this opportunity to do the 3-story, it was like a 3-story building across the street from Harrison Park. And it's this beautiful Xochipilli child, basically. You know, he kind of named it the Xochipilli kid because it's a young kid sitting cross-legged, and he's got a mask that represents the Xochipilli god. And it's just magnificent. So to have that that type of artwork basically gifted to the community, because any of our existing younger generation that's living here is gonna see it and connect with it. But he was very conscious about what was gonna be seen with the families and the kids coming to that park, you know, and I think that was really beautiful. You know, and then in contrast, like as we were talking about earlier, where we have newer generations of artists making their way, making their name and paving their way in the art scene and having opportunities to do big murals and maybe not thinking about some of those things. So for example, like there's a big mural that went up across the street from the Jumping Bean. It's the side of the Pilsen Vintage. And there was an older mural on there, and it was the James Foley dedicated mural. And we didn't really know about it until after the fact, and whether we like it or not, like when art related things are happening, you know, we get messages or we get phone calls or we get visits or like, hey, what do you like, for some reason do you want to know what we think about stuff? And it's like, I was a bit heartbroken because for one, it had been up for a number of years. And I think again, you know, no disrespect to the artist that did the artwork on that wall, but I think in the way that was organized, asking some really important questions to then decide if that was a significant place to do some of that could have been touched on, you know. And, you know, James Foley, for people that don't know, you know, he was a journalist and he was really connected with the Pilsen community in Chicago. And, you know, he was taken hostage and basically was murdered live by terrorists, and the video was put out there. And so that mural was, I didn't know him personally, but you know, I think because of the connection that he had to the people here in Pilsen, which even has like another connection that I don't think people realize, is that Rudy, a very important and significant person in Pilsen who passed away at Simone's, who was murdered at Simone's bar, was one of the key organizers of that particular mural, and contacting and gathering the artists to put that dedication. And so when you have it painted over, and I don't know if there was a discussion on having that recreated somewhere else, or asking the original artists if they had any opinion about it, because that would be the respectful thing to do. Just like any of the murals, let's say on 16th Street, if somebody wants to paint something, if you know who the artist is and you know that it's kind of coming apart or it needs to be redone, you reach out to the artist and you say, hey, I have this idea. There was a good majority or part of the neighborhood that had issue with that new mural coming up, because it removed a super important story, not just connected to our neighborhood and to the immediate people living here that helped organize to get that mural done, but also in the city, because he had a connection to the city, and to the country because he was a journalist, and then in a political sense because we are a very politically driven type neighborhood. And I felt heavy in my heart.
Pandemic, I was able to see a new business open. I went to a good friend of mine, Carlos Rodriguez. Some folks know him as Charlie Glitch. He's a DJ here in the community. He's been here for all his life, and he just opened a space for creatives on down 18th Street, across street from Jungman. Not exactly sure what he's gonna do with it. I just went to go check out the build.
Come in, brother. What's up, man? Welcome.
How's it going, brother?
Just fixing up stuff. I'm still adding to everything.
Nice, dude.
Studio. I'm actually gonna have a new studio like right here. I have records. I have obviously the brand, got a brand here. Taco Sublime. Right here, this brand, which is my business partner.
Going off from what Charlie was saying, pretty much being able to curate a space where we can bring and mesh all our sensories experience and put tangibles that people are going to be able to feel in a space where they can come and encompass experience, right? So that's pretty much what it's called Project 1021 as well, because we all have our individual creative senses and we're putting them together in a space where it's going to allow everyone to have its own space and matter to evolve, but at the same time it's going to make sense all together. So yeah, that's pretty much. And also we want to be able to showcase and let other creatives have a space where they can see and they can come and get motivated and be able to learn from whatever we can show them and how we bring up our products to the table, so that they can come and ask questions and we can teach them so they can go out there and get their passions.
Be creative right now. The main thing is that we gotta still be creative. We still gotta be active. We're losing people so many, every day this year. It's like, yo, anytime we can go anytime. Might as well just go all in right now. Not guarantee tomorrow, man. Go all in already, That's the main goal. Just be expressive. Go all in. Take a chance. Right now it's about taking a chance again. Excited. I'm excited, baby. Let's go. Team on 3, 1, 2, 3, team. Woo!
That will to just continue to push, even though right now everything looks, dark, but I'm glad to see him still giving back in one way or the other, and I'm excited for him, and I'm excited for all these businesses that are doing everything they can to stay open, and hopefully after the pandemic is over, hopefully soon, they've survived, and we could help them stay open and pump full of life, so they could come back and stronger for next year, for 2021.
So we're going to continue to do that as Pilsen Arts and Community House. I think also we're going to focus on these things with our, this new venture with Pilsen Pod. Make sure we have these conversations about these newer businesses to go and support them. So people need to, like our videos and subscribe to the videos, so you get the notifications and the different things. I know We don't need to be watching all this trash. We could be watching informative videos like this one, and I thank you, Javier, for bringing us in. You know, we have a home here for you, and we can't wait for community to chime in and ask us questions about what, you know, just whatever is on their mind about the community, because I think, you know, my interaction with the community right now, when it's not people walking through these doors, is through like the Facebook Chisme or the Facebook Facebook neighborhood page, where it's like about like, oh yeah, you stole my bicycle for the 100th time, you know, like I get it, like this is a city, this is a big city, and this is part of the neighborhood. Like don't forget that you're in a big city, right? People should not forget that. Don't forget that there's still shootings. Don't forget that there's still issues that need to be dealt with in the neighborhood. But you know, if we come together, I think there's a lot of things that we could do. We got our mezcal here. We got Mezcal Union. We're trying out today.
So if anybody wants to donate us a bottle of mezcal for our
for the next show.
For the next one, we got these nice little cups that
we're taking sponsorships. This is actually shout out to
Mexico in a Bottle that we have been working with for a number of years.
4 years now.
Yeah. They have basically like an expo. We didn't have it this year, but we hope to be part of it next year. And we get invited to share the artwork of artists that we represent. They gave us a shout out not too long ago, so we thought it would be fitting to do that for them.
It's delicious. I love it. Been sipping at it. Cheers. Salud.